Jacksonville, Florida is the largest U.S. city by land area, but what does that really mean? Let's get into it. So when most people hear, largest city by land area, many people probably assume that that's referring to the physical size of the city, the urban development, the street grid, the freeways, the buildings, the strip malls, the housing, neighborhoods, things of that nature. But that's not actually what the stat is referring to. You see, what this stat is referring to is the city limits of Jacksonville, which are outlined here in red. And if you look closely here, much of what is contained within the Jacksonville city limits is not really a city at all. In fact, close to half of all the land area contained within the Jacksonville city limits is not urban area. It's just forests, grassland, marshes, areas that do not have neighborhoods, that do not have strip malls, or really any form of urban development, which then makes Jacksonville unique in a completely different way. Jacksonville may be one of the only major U.S. cities that has a metropolitan area that is similar in size or even smaller than in size in total land area than the city limits themselves, which really contrasts what we see in other major cities. Let's take Atlanta, Georgia, for example. Outlined in red again are the city limits of Atlanta. But as you can see, the urban area of the Atlanta metropolitan area extends far beyond the Atlanta city limits. And while technically Jacksonville, Florida is a larger city by land area than Atlanta, Georgia, based on what we know now, does that really seem accurate? I mean, despite the technicality based on city limit size, which is completely irrelevant outside of, government functions, I don't think any rational adult could visit both Jacksonville, Florida and Atlanta, Georgia and come to the conclusion that Jacksonville is the larger city. In fact, here is a direct comparison between both of these areas. Again, while technically Jacksonville, Florida does have a much larger city limit than Atlanta, I think it's important that we look at these two side by side and understand exactly what that means. And I think a lot of people are under this impression that just because a city has a large city limit, that means that's how big the city physically is. Like, the city limits don't dictate how large an urban area is, and an urban area doesn't dictate how large a city limit is. And really, the size and scale of city limits are based on so many other things outside of population or outside of urban development. A lot of times it really just comes down to geography or history or government structure. It really has nothing to do with how big or small a city really is. And again, just for the sake of comparison, if you were to theoretically take the city limits of Jacksonville, Florida and plop it directly over the core of the Atlanta urban area, more than 3.5 million people would be contained within those boundaries. So while technically on paper, Jacksonville, Florida is the largest US city by land area, I think we all understand now that really that's not the full picture, and comparing cities or measuring cities strictly by their city limits is kind of, stupid. And that was today's episode of Urban Corner. Make sure to drop a follow and stay tuned for more content just like this, where we discuss and compare cities all around the world. See you next time, guys.